It's important to recognize that these general rules we're following to rearrange these geometry equations work for all equations. We'll look at a couple more examples with dimensions in a hexagon, and then we'll look at some examples with equations that aren't related to geometry. In all, the same general rules will apply. To move terms from one side of the equation to the other, we apply the opposite operation. And when we have equations where we have both addition and subtraction and multiplication and division, it's easiest to move the terms that are being added or subtracted first, and then perform any necessary multiplication or division. Let's look at a couple more geometry examples first. Here we have some other dimensions in the hexagon, and these equations are on your formula sheet. In the hexagon, we can talk about the distance across the hexagon in terms of the flat-to-flat distance, labeled here with F, or the point-to-point distance, labeled here with the D. We also have the side length, here labeled with the A. In this question, we have a hexagonal nut that measures 3/4 of an inch across the flats. So that's our measurement for the flat-to-flat distance. We could work with it as a fraction or as a decimal, 0.75 inches. I want to find the side length, A, and I also want to find the distance across the corners, D. These will be two separate calculations. When we are rounding our final answers, we'll round these to one decimal place. If you look on your formula sheet, you have an equation that has our unknown, side length A, in it, and our known value, the flat distance, in it. We have the equation F equals 1.732 times A. If I sub in the distance that I know for F, 0.75, equals 1.732 times A, I now have an equation I can solve to get A by itself so I know the side length. Right now, A is being multiplied by 1.732, so on the other side, that becomes the opposite, division. And when you do that division, 0.75 divided by 1.732, you get a long decimal number, 2.3093, and so on. For A, to report this answer, we'll round to one decimal place. Our side length, A, is 2.3 inches. We'll also find the distance from corner to corner, or D. And you have on your formula sheet the equation that distance D equals 2 times A, our side length. Now we know A, our side length, so we can substitute that in. Again, I'll stick with using the unrounded value, so if you still have it on your calculator, you won't have to type in all those decimals again. And here notice that I have nothing to rearrange. My variable D that I want to solve for is already on its own side of the equation, so I simply need to do the multiplication, and I get 4.6186. And to round my final answer to one decimal place, 4.6 inches from corner to corner of the nut. So you can apply these algebra rules to any equation. Take a look at the next example. Here we have an example with Ohm's law that gives us the relationship between current, which has the symbol I and is measured in amps, voltage, which has the symbol V measured in volts, and resistance with the symbol R measured in the units of ohms. I'd like you to find the value for voltage if the resistance is 500 ohms and the current is 0.018 amps. And your starting equation is here, I equals V over R. R is our resistance, current is the value for I. So if I substitute in 0.018 amps equals, we don't know voltage, over our value for resistance is 500. I'm trying to get my variable V by itself. Right now it's being divided by that 500, so to move that to the other side, I do the opposite operation, or multiply by 500. When you do that multiplication, you get a value of 9 volts. Challenge yourself and try the next example using the Pythagorean theorem, which is an equation we'll see again later in the course. In this equation, A, B, and C are all side lengths of a right triangle, and C is a side that's specifically called the hypotenuse, which is the longest side of a right triangle. You're given the value here for the side length of the hypotenuse, 14 inches, and you're told side A is 8 inches. Try and find side B. When you get to the end, round your answer to one decimal place. Pause the video and try this yourself. And a solution is shown here for you to check your work. Note that as you get comfortable with these strategies, you may start combining skills and steps, and that's okay. As long as you're not breaking any of the math rules or the general rules for solving algebra equations, you should get to the same final answer, which in this case is that B has a side length of 11.5 inches.